Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today and joining us for Capacity Building in Action, addressing youth vaping through the Strategic Prevention Framework. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce you all to Wanda Hudson, who's going to be leading us through today's Lunch and Learn. We're glad to see some of you who were here yesterday. This is the second part of a five-part SPIF blitz, for lack of a better word. And so we're glad to have you here today, and we will be presenting Lunch and Learns all the rest of this week as well. Why don't we jump in, Wanda? Great. So here's our acknowledgement that this presentation has been prepared by the South Southwest Prevention Technology Transfer Center out of the University of Oklahoma. We work under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration's Center for Substance Abuse Prevention. Please do not reproduce or distribute this publication for a fee without written authorization from the University of Oklahoma. And we just want to note that the opinions expressed here are the view of the authors and don't reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services and of SAMHSA. Let's keep going. We can jump right in. So without any further ado, I'm excited to introduce you to Wanda Hudson. She brings over 25 years of experience in substance use prevention with a strong emphasis on community and state level prevention initiatives utilizing the Strategic Prevention Framework, or the SPIF. She also brings over 17 years of experience as an instructional designer, planning and delivering high-impact training and technical assistance as a behavioral health professional to the prevention workforce, to emerging professionals, organizations, and to community interest groups. Wanda, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. Looking at that bio, I'm thinking, wow, this spiff has been a part of my life for about half of my life. So pretty interesting. Here's our learning objectives today. Thank you all for being here and coming back after yesterday. We have a lot to cover. Spiff Blitz is good. Spiff Blizzard. We're having I don't know how many of you are getting snow, but we're covering prevention with the SPIF this week. And we're glad that you can be a part of this with us. We had a great session yesterday. Our learning objectives today are going to be all about the capacity building step. And it'll focus on the key components of the capacity building phase of the strategic prevention framework. And then also, you'll have an opportunity to learn and to put into practice some of the strategies involved in capacity building to help strengthen the prevention infrastructure. And so you'll learn what components are important to do that. And then together we'll develop the beginnings of an action plan approach to help us to enhance the community readiness across the SPIF. So here we go. Let's get started. So if you joined us yesterday, you learned that we'll have just a tiny bit of a review. You learned that this is the Strategic Prevention Framework, my best friend for many years. And this framework is a model that we use in prevention to help us to strategically think about each of the steps and the components that we need to consider as we do community prevention work. And we want our prevention work to last. We want it to be sustainable over time, and we want to have positive outcome. So capacity building is, well, okay, so going back to the steps of the SPIF, we have the 5 steps of the SPIF, and in the middle of that, we talked a little bit about it yesterday, we have sustainability and community relevance. So we're looking at our community's needs, and we want our actions to be built to last, like a Ford truck. We as we learned yesterday, the steps of the SPIF are cyclical. And so you might find yourself going from assessment to capacity to planning, but then maybe back to assessment, or in the planning phase, looking at evaluation. So we'll move around in those steps at different times while we're working that process. And then, for example, today while we're working, and yesterday while we're working on the Riverton Youth Strong Coalition, that was a case study that we worked on yesterday, if you weren't able to join us yesterday. So as we work with that coalition and the case study, we'll learn about, we'll talk about ways in which maybe we need to go back to assessment and collect some more data. And that even happened to us yesterday. So if you attend all of these trainings this week, you'll receive an overview of all of the 5 steps and how this model and each of the steps connect to one another and connect to planning evidence-based substance use and misuse prevention programs and practices in your own communities. So is everybody ready to do that? I saw that some of you said that you attended yesterday. So who is planning to attend every training this week? Maybe just by a raise of hands using your reaction button. I'll definitely be there. All right, I see lots of hands. That is amazing. Because as you'll see today when we continue to talk about capacity building, you'll see how that relates to other steps of the SPIF. Especially, you're going to see the connection between capacity building and implementation, and how important this capacity building step is. Sometimes coalitions work on capacity building for 6 months to a year before they even begin implementation. Not everyone has the luxury of doing that because of funding or different reasons. And capacity building can continue to happen throughout implementation and throughout other steps of the SPIF. You'll continually be building the capacity of new partners and trying to encourage others to get involved. And so let's keep on going. So here's a quick reminder from yesterday, and let's take a look at our logic model. How many of you remember the logic model from yesterday? Remember what those components are that go in the logic model. So Richard's going to pull up a poll for us, and we're going to see if we can remember what goes in each one of those boxes. All right, thanks, Richard. What are the 3 elements of a logic model? Is it problems and related behaviors, distribution and determinants, evidence-based interventions, or risk and protective factors? You can choose 3 of them.
Poll is marked as single choice.
Oh, it is? Oops. Okay, why don't we put in the chat then? What are the 3 that you would choose? I see we got a good start there, though. It looks like we had a good distribution.
I can restart it and make it multiple choice.
Okay, can you do that, Richard, quickly? All right, we'll start the poll again. Thank you. This isn't Richard's fault. I threw this one in at the last minute this morning, so we appreciate you doing that. I thought it would be a great review for us.
Okay, that's a new one.
Oh yeah, look at that. It's going. We're getting pretty good even distribution here. All right, so I think we can end the poll. Maybe not everyone has had a chance yet, but we'll review these. So if you selected A, C, and D, problems and related behaviors, evidence-based interventions, and risk and protective factors, you were correct. Distribution and determinants is something that we talked about yesterday. So I threw that in just to throw you off, but those are the three components of the logic model. So which one of those three goes in the blue box? You guys can put it in the chat, or you can come off mute. Correct. I see several of you saying the problem areas. And let me see if I can get my computer to move forward. There we go. Problems and related behaviors. How about the orange? What goes in the orange or red or whatever that is? Right, risk and protective factors. And then lastly, in the green, what goes in there are evidence-based interventions. That's right. Thank you. You guys did awesome on that. So our community will first use data, as we did yesterday, to define the problem or the issue. And then it'll define what the contributing risk and protective factors are. What's contributing to the problem. And then finally, what we're going to do about it. So why does that matter? I mean, we built this yesterday. Why does this matter to capacity? Well, there's a few reasons why the logic model is important to us in the capacity building phase. And the biggest reason is because it serves as a roadmap for the prevention efforts for us and everyone else. So it is the thing. You know, sometimes we talk about on our team, what's the thing? What's the thing we're going to go back to and show the community? What is the thing that is going to inform us about the direction that we're taking? So that's what the logic model is. And when there is an issue about where we're going, we can continue to go back to that data. That data proves. It identifies additional potential partners and team members. So we'll show you in a little bit how you can look at the problems and related behaviors and the risk and protective factors and use that to help you determine who your partners are and who you might actually need. And you'll strategically plan for that. It clarifies the roles and tasks. So later we'll also go through a action plan that will help us to clarify those roles. And specifically, at each step of the spiff, what are the roles and the tasks? Again, in implementation on Thursday, you'll get a lot about that. Heather Araya will talk to you about helping to define what those roles are, and then you know, and making sure you distribute that to your community members. And then the logic model communicates the plan to the partners. Again, you show that plan to the partners. You'll get some more ideas on how to do that on Thursday. And then it aligns your efforts and strengthens your collaboration across sectors. So we'll continue to work with maybe law enforcement as a sector we're working with, or the schools. And it is the one thing that brings us all together and connects us. So let's move into capacity building and learning a little bit more about what capacity building entails. What are the components of that? So capacity building is all about strengthening our ability and your community's ability to implement effective prevention strategies. So remember when I said capacity building and implementation are connected. You don't want, has anybody been this person? You don't want to be that person that's out there doing the prevention activities all by yourself, I promise, because I've been there. Has anybody been that person? So capacity building helps you to get that community behind you, get individuals who will put your strategic plan into action. So there are two goals that we have in the capacity building process, and we'll talk a lot about those today, and they really are the definition of capacity building, and that is improving the community's readiness and increasing resources. So what does building capacity allow us to do? Again, it allows us to implement the SPIF process and implement those specific strategies, and then helps us to sustain those efforts, not only our outcomes, but also our organization over time. Because we'll also be looking at, when we consider resources, we consider funding and how we can increase our funding or sustain our funding. So here it is. There's our two resources and readiness models. Excuse me. Richard, did I miss a chat that we were going to have there? No. Yeah, okay, the chat is here. So what does this mean? What does resources and readiness mean? Let's go into those a little bit more in depth. What types of resources do you think a program or a coalition would need in order to address a substance use or misuse problem? So write in the chat, what types of resources do you think a program or coalition would need in order to address a substance use problem? Okay, community input, experts, partner organizations, law enforcement, data, funding, human fiscal, bricks and mortar, yes. Funding, buy-in, yep, buy-in from our community, education, materials, stakeholders, partners, community partners, knowledge, education, political will, school systems, opportunities, resources to support the families of the person, community readiness, people with lived experiences, family support. Thank you for all of that. So resources, I see that you all included several of these. We need those resources that are human, financial, organizational, and material. So several of you mentioned that we would need partners and stakeholders. Some of you said we needed funding. Organizational, we didn't talk too much about that except for partnerships. Maybe we need policies in place in our organization. Maybe we need some type of infrastructure that would support the prevention programming. And then under materials, this is something maybe we already have. Maybe we already have an office space. Maybe we already have the technology and the supplies that we need. But these are things that we will consider in the capacity building phase. Do we have everything that we will need to be able to implement this prevention and address the programs and risk and protective factors? So remembering that resources means ensuring that you have what you need to carry out the intervention successfully. So what is readiness? What about readiness? Who needs to be prepared and willing to address the identified problem in the community. Who needs to be prepared for that? Parents, the school system, community agencies, parents again, schools, the political system, yep. Medical facilities, site champions, law enforcement, community leaders, us on this call, yes, absolutely. Faith-based decision makers, youth, shareholders. So yes, you guys got it right again. So what readiness does for us is there's a few things that we accomplish within the readiness phase. So awareness, does the community understand the problem? Attitude, do they see that it's important to address? And then knowledge, do they know the benefits of taking action? So we can measure readiness using tools like a readiness scale, which we'll talk about later on. But just to give you an example of how this might work. So we have, let's pretend that we have a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low readiness and 5 being very readiness. So on a scale of 1 to 5, you can put this in the chat box. How ready is your community to address caffeine use among adults aged 20 to 35? We had a lengthy conversation about that before we even got on the call today. Yes, everyone was looking for their coffee. Okay, so probably at a 1, right? Our community would probably be not be very ready to address. We'd have to do a lot of background and legwork to increase that. So in our SPIF series this week, we're focusing on a case study in Riverton. It's a fictitious community. And we're talking about youth vaping. Just thinking about your own community. It depends on what's laced in the coffee. Think about your own community. How ready is your community to address youth vaping? And thinking about some of these, are they aware of the problem? What are their attitudes? What's their knowledge? Okay, so people are saying 3, 4, a little bit higher. So you can see how that readiness can fluctuate depending on what the problem is, depending on the community, the culture in the community. There's a lot of different variables that contribute to that. So, of course, we're just guessing right here. There are actually very scientific tools that help us to assess the readiness. And I've included some of those tools in the resources in this slide deck, which, by the way, you will get in about a week or so. Either they will be posted, actually, they'll be posted on the website. And those of you who are registered will be able to receive them by email. So make sure you're registered. You can still get on there and register. At the end of this presentation, I'll share a link with you to be able to register. So what all of this means together is we could really say that resources and readiness really is capacity building. And which means that you're better equipped to implement your interventions that lead to meaningful prevention outcomes. So we'll talk about these 3 components today, and these are the 3 components that help us to achieve successful prevention outcomes and to be successful at building capacity within the community. The first one is engaging community interest groups, and that's what we've already been doing. But there's 2 criteria that we really want to consider that help us to leverage our community and determine what's in it for them. One of those is, do they care, whoever this partner is or that you're considering, do they care about the health and well-being of the community? And the other is, do they have a stake in the prevention efforts, whether positive or negative? How are they affected? So, and then also engaging them early within the process, involving them in every step of the spiff. Has anyone ever been pulled into a project that has been going on for a really long time, and everyone's expecting you to be on board and know what's going on? Well, we don't want to do that with our prevention projects. We want to involve everyone that is a part of our prevention team early on and in every step. And then develop and strengthen the prevention team. So this is how we will begin to build the capacity and the readiness of the team members. That includes us, like someone said in the chat earlier. And then lastly, we'll talk about raising community awareness and tapping into those prevention partners and the community interest groups to help us to raise community awareness about the issue, raise community awareness about the prevention process, and help bring in other partners. So here is our first one, engaging community interest groups. It may seem like an unlikely place for us to start as we're discussing community capacity building, but in order for us to move forward, we have to move back for a second. This yesterday, I think Richard is going to post. Thank you, Richard. He is so fast. He already posted the case study from yesterday. So if you didn't see that, we were talking about a community coalition named Riverton Youth Strong, and they have been looking at the data for youth vaping. And this is some of the stuff that they've seen. In the blue is where we defined some of our risk and protective factors yesterday. But this is all, this is the data that we have available. As you can see, we're lacking in we may be lacking in data in some different areas, but this is just a short example. So some of our indicators are, we have an increase in 10th graders reporting vaping in the past 30 days. So that's up from 14% in 2021. We have a number of vaping related incidents. That's an increase by 65% in 2 years. Adults who believe vaping is harmful is 48%, which means 52% believe it's not harmful. And some of our focus groups revealed to us that youth are vaping because of stress. Everyone does it. It's not as bad as smoking. And then we've seen some health related issues due to nicotine, and those incidents are up 30%. And then lastly, retailers are selling to minors at a 22% non-compliance rate. So this information is important to us because we can translate this back to the logic model, and that will help us to determine those players that will best help us to address these risk and protective factors. So yesterday we identified the problem and related behavior as 30-day nicotine vaping usage among high school youth. And then we identified some risk and two risk factors and one protective factor, because we decided, it's not in our notes, but we decided that we did find out that the school had a after school program. So we thought that was a good protective factor. So as we move into planning and capacity building, we will need a strong prevention team. And this team is going to be the guiding force behind our prevention efforts. Again, they're going to help us raise awareness. They're going to be the ones that will be out there in the community. So we want to start with a core group, and that could include community and organizational leaders. Oops, excuse me. That can include community and organization leaders with access to resources. It can include community members who can have an influence, especially those who might have an influence on the population that we're addressing, which is high school youth. So who are, based on what we know so far about the problem and the risk factors, who are some likely interest groups that we might want to engage? Some of the information and based on some of the information we know about the case study. Okay, 10th grade parents, youth, athletic coaches, faith communities, older youth who may purchase, school liaisons, vape shops, teachers, law enforcement, SROs, school program coordinators. You guys came up with a really great list. That's a good list, huh, Katie? Doctors and dentists, yes, great. So that's a really good list to get us started. Now we can go to the next. There we go. So when we talk about engaging community interest groups, we need to think broadly, including both primary and secondary interest groups. So primary are those that are directly impacted. You may have some folks who will attend all of your meetings, and you will have some who will just be involved maybe during the data collection process and just be informed about other activities that are going on. Sometimes there will be a different level of participation. Secondary groups may not be directly affected, but they can influence our outcomes and be indirectly impacted. So for Riverton, say, a secondary group could include retailers or the faith-based organizations or local businesses, media outlets, parks and recreation, transportation services. So lots of different choices there. Thinking about this, here's a question I have for you, because in my prevention work in the community, I've had some unlikely prevention champions. Could you put in the chat box who have been some of your unlikely prevention champions? We'll just move on while you guys think about that. So Taco Bell, I love it. Pet advocacy, senior citizens, small businesses, local gas station owner, Walmart, EMTs, seniors, local cafe owner, churches, youth leaders. My unlikely prevention champion was the planning and zoning officer. And boy, he got into it and went to all the trainings, did everything. Gift shop owners. I love this list. That is so fun. And it's great to see that, we're all out there in the community and Miss May, she lives on the corner. That she knows everyone and sees everything. She's Miss May. Everybody needs a Miss May in their prevention programs, right? Okay, so the key is, and some funding and some literature says, to start with 12 different sectors to make sure that you have some diversity. So engaging community interest groups, recruiting and defining the roles. So we want to start by asking ourselves what work needs to be done and which spiff step are we currently engaged in. And for example, if the coalition is working on the assessment step, you may need some members who have some access to specific data, or they possess technology or analytical skills. They can help with to interpret findings. So depending on the step that you're in, you may need assistance, and capacity building is huge. Maybe you need some training and technical assistance providers to help do that. Maybe there's some resources online that you need. Maybe you should pull some things from the PTTC to be able to train your group. Once you identify individuals or organizations that can positively impact the problem behavior, then you want to make a list of the tasks under the spiff step. Has anyone ever done that? This is not a step I've ever done. Raise your hands if you've ever done that, if you've made a list of, because if you have, we want you to share that with everyone. Jewel, have you done that? All the steps, I mean, all of the tasks required under each of the spiff? Okay, if anybody has, please share it with us. And then match them with the potential partners. So remember that the coalition roles include, we want them either to implement the spiff, maybe they have access to resources, they can help recruit individuals and organizations, like some of those that were listed in your list in the chat. They will help you to set goals, objectives, and benchmarks for success. They'll help you to work through that spiff. They will also help to engage others in doing the work. On Thursday, Heather will show us how she has worked with her youth coalitions to be able to engage others within the community. And then our community interest groups will help us to outreach and raise community awareness, and obviously celebrate the success, because we're going to be successful at our prevention program, right? So don't forget to involve the priority population, which in the case of Riverton is high school youth. And then the other important person to involve, as someone put in the chat, is yourself. So make sure that you define the roles that you are going to play within the community as well during this prevention project. Okay, that's good to know. So CADCA's National Coalition Academy training breaks out some of those tasks. And it wouldn't be too difficult. I mean, there's plenty of resources out there. I was just wondering if anyone had specifically done that. So you can use this list in recruiting and defining the roles, then, and you can transfer this over to your action plan. So now we're moving on to that second key component, which is developing and strengthening the prevention team. So as you consider those individuals, so here we have the school, parents, and youth. These were some that we just pulled out of the case study. So we want to define We'll skip readiness for just a second because we're going to go back to readiness in just a minute. But we can begin to look at what is the role that the school is going to play. In this case, we do have a positive that the school has an after-school prevention program. I mean, not prevention, but they just have an after-school program. So maybe their role would be that they would help us to, they would work with us to implement some of those strategies within the after-school program. Something I noticed is that building capacity. Yes, yep, most definitely. And it can take a long time, Jenna. And so that's why this process, and there's a lot involved in building capacity. I mean, here are just 4 different things that we need to consider, and there's a lot more. We need to consider who those individuals are going to be, and what their role will be, what types of training and resources they have available, and what do we still need to do. And then we need to provide that training, and we have to continually provide that training and continually build that capacity. So let me see if there's anything else here that I wanted to. Let's look at, okay. I think we'll wait to do that until we talk about readiness, sorry. Okay, so this helps us to start to think about who are the human resources in our community and define what their role is and how we'll be able to, you know, maybe the school already has a training that is available on vaping that we can use. Maybe the parents already have an existing parent group. So we want to look at not only just the community itself, but also leadership. So capacity building, again, is about resources and readiness. Let's look at readiness for just a minute. So readiness is the degree in which a community is willing and prepared to take action on an issue. So we looked at that for a minute ago when we were talking about caffeine and vaping. So today we're sharing the community readiness model. It was developed by researchers at the Triethnic Center for Prevention Research. And this is what that looks like. The community readiness model. We will also be sharing a whole handbook on this, and there are multiple resources online about the community readiness model. And so this is just to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown of what that looks like. 1,000 cups of coffee. Stage 1 being community tolerance. I'm trying to look at the chat a little bit over there. Stage 1 being community tolerance, no knowledge. And then moving on up to stage 9, community ownership. So look at this list and think about our chart that we had just a moment ago. Where would our parents be? Where are they as far as awareness goes, as far as their knowledge about prevention and about the, okay, so most people are saying at a 2 or 3, because also only about half of them believe that it's a problem, right? So that's a tough one. So there might be many that are in denial or that have a vague awareness. Good. I think you guys did a good job on that. So this is going to help us identify our community's strengths and their weaknesses, and what kind of obstacles that we might be looking at in order to help us to move forward. And I changed this slide, but I think I ended up with a different slide deck. So we have parents, youth, and the schools. So that first one should be schools. And this is basically just the question that we had a moment ago. So does anybody remember what are the two criteria that we want to use when we're selecting community members to be involved? Either they care about what? Do you remember? So they care about promoting the health and well-being of the community. And then what else do they? Okay. Or they have a stake in the issue. So they have something either to gain or to lose by our prevention and promotion efforts. So educating our interest groups, we either need to educate them about the behavior problem itself, about prevention itself, just understanding prevention and how it works. That's a whole culture that that a lot of people aren't exposed to. And then understanding the data and what that shows, knowledge of resources, opportunities to contribute to the intervention. So what things have you done to help educate your community? This could be through presentations, newsletters, social media, anything creative like that. What have you done to educate your community and to maybe to increase the readiness? Okay, ads on the side of local buses. Wow. Teen-led presentations, town halls, lunch and learns, partnering with other organizations. This is when I think the best learning comes out, is when you all are able to share with one another and share the ideas that you have, providing resources during events. So this is a great list of ideas and ways in which you can educate your interest groups. The third key is raising community awareness. So what is the purpose of raising the community awareness? There's a few things why this is important. Is again, this is all a part of readiness. So a part of that readiness model that you'll see in that handout is you will also see that there are ways to increase readiness in each one of those levels. And a lot of that is education and training and involving folks. So you'll see different ideas, one-on-one meetings, or inviting them to a training, having town hall meetings, some of the things that you already mentioned. So the purpose of raising community awareness is increasing awareness of the issue. So we want to let people know, why is it important that youth are not vaping? Why is it a problem? And then engage additional partners. So another purpose of raising community awareness is to help us to bring other individuals in and help us to accomplish what we're doing. Some of you, a lot of you probably have worked with legislators and educating them and bringing them in as additional partners. Also increasing the readiness of partners and the community to address the problem behavior. We talked about that. ensuring that community relevance is maintained. So at the middle of the SPIF are those two guiding principles, the last two check marks there, ensuring that community relevance is maintained and that we are also ensuring sustainability. Our focus population needs to be aware and be a part of that process. Now, okay, so I have a reflection activity for you. So listen to the story and then I'll have some questions for you. So in one community, we partnered with a local high school video production class to launch a prevention media advocacy awareness campaign. We began by training students and their instructor on the risks of underage drinking and the criteria for effective prevention media advocacy. So equipped with this knowledge, the students created videos to share within the community. The top 3 videos were showcased at the school's semi-annual video award ceremony and then featured at the local movie theater before feature films for an entire month. This approach not only raised awareness, but it also engaged youth in a meaningful way and ensured that the content was relevant and impactful. It involved the youth. And if we had decided that we were going to do videos, well, we could do that and maybe they would be effective or not. But we also now have lots of youth that have been trained and have an increased readiness to participate in the prevention efforts. So let's reflect on the purpose of raising community awareness. So did this program increase awareness of the issue and the need for prevention? You can answer in the chat, just yes or no. Yes, yes, it did. How about engage additional partners? Did we bring in additional partners? Yes, who are those partners? The youth themselves? Who else? More youth, more youth. Anybody else? The theaters? Yep, anyone seeing the movie? Oh, good point. Was there a call to action? I don't remember that there was now that I'm thinking about it. Media partners, parents? Yeah, because you bet those parents were there to see their children's video. How about, did it increase the readiness of the community? Yes, again. How about, did it ensure community relevance? Do you think community relevance was maintained in this scenario? Again, yes. How about ensuring sustainability? Yeah, so great. So as you can see from this example, when community members are informed and they're involved, prevention efforts are more likely to meet genuine needs that build on the local strengths and they produce lasting positive outcomes. Thank you all for participating in that. So what can you do to raise community awareness? A lot of you already have some really great ideas. So what I'm going to do here, there's some probably more common ideas here on the slide, but let's have how much time do we have? Not very much. Let's have a 1-minute chat storm and talk about what are some of okay. Imagine that you're a preventionist from our fictitious community of Riverton. And you have a small budget. That's not too hard to imagine, right? We all are very familiar with that. What is the purpose of your community engagement is to make your community aware of the risks of youth vaping. What unique engaging strategies could you use? Think about social media partnerships. We talked about some of those earlier, but specifically, we want to raise community awareness because there's different purposes for raising community awareness. This is just, we want to let the people know about the risks of youth vaping. Fact sheets, TikTok, health fair, Facebook posts, billboards, point of sale fact sheets, radio ads. So you have video banners and sports games. Oh yeah. Some people have a bigger budget or they have some good partners. A pop-up info session, I like that. Develop one-pagers with data visualizations. I've seen that done, and that's very effective. Just those one-pagers, it's been my experience. Those are great to take to school principals, to someone who's very busy, a legislator, and just show them the impact and that data. Radio interviews. You guys came up with some great ideas. If you would like, you can show me by a thumbs up. If you would like, we can share this list. If you would like to have that list for the future, lots of thumbs up. Okay, we're going to do it. We're going to pull it from the chat and we'll put that into a document for all of you to be able to use. So this is where we have been. We've talked about the key components of capacity building, that of being engaged with engaging community interest groups, developing and strengthening the prevention team, and raising community awareness. And these are the things that are going to help us to be able to make our prevention strategies relevant to the community and sustainable over time. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And you'll see some other resources at the end of this presentation that will give you a lot more information about each one of these components. So here's our key takeaways for today. Capacity building increases resources and readiness. If you don't learn anything else, I hope that you learned that. It increases resources and readiness. Resources are those human, organizational, financial, and material things that help us to move forward with our interventions. And then readiness increases the awareness and the knowledge and the changing attitudes of those individuals within the community, our target population, ourselves, anyone that we'll be working with and that is affected. And then capacity building increases sustainability. I'm going to skip to the bottom one, improves implementation, because we have done all this groundwork and we have lots of people to help us implement, and all those key people who have influence. And then second to the last one, these are those two criteria again, the interest groups and potential partners. They either care about promoting health and well-being, or they have something to gain or lose. The retailers, they might have something to gain or lose by being involved in our prevention promotion efforts. So that may be a way that we can leverage their interest and participation. So I'm going to turn the time over to Katie. Thank you all for your participation, your wonderful ideas. That was so great to see. There's always so much more that comes out of your participation than the presentation itself. So any questions that you all have?
And maybe as questions are going in the chat, would you put up the next slide just because I see some folks are starting to log off and we are here for questions. We also really want your feedback. So if you're able to take a minute and just give us some feedback on today's session, helps us craft what we're going to be doing in the future as well. And
Thanks,
please
Bob.
do put those questions in the chat as you're there. The other thing I want to share with you all as we're wrapping up is we do have sessions for the rest of this week. If you haven't registered yet, it is not too late. Um, you can use this QR code right here. You can register for our remaining SPIF lunch and learns on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then when you get these slides, you'll see that we have our contact info. You can reach out to us. We've got some additional resources, the references that Wanda used for today. All of that is available to you as well.